Hi, I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have our NFL 2024, I guess technically, Wildcard weekend episode. No reaction episode this week because the regular season is a thing of the past. And as a Vikings fan, thank God it is, because this was a headache of a regular season. We'll come back stronger with a top 10 pick and Kirk Cousins next year.
Yeah, once you lost Cousins, it was really over for you.
The fact that we went 5-0 after Cousins was almost irritating now at this point, because we could have been like a top 5 draft pick, gotten a real stud, and we still would have not had to really complain because we lost our starting quarterback. But nonetheless, it was fun to watch the games. It was fun on that 5-0 streak. But past is the regular season, future is the wild card and the playoffs. Before we jump into these 6 games for just this week, just a quick update on Cal and I's head-to-head pick'em game. I had a pretty decent week with 14 points, and Callan only dropped 11 points, which is the first time I've won a week, and man, it's got to be like pushing double-digit weeks. I feel
you win like every so often, like
literally every so often.
Most of the weeks I've taken
once in a blue moon. So that puts me down by 11 points, with me at a total of 188 and Callan at a total of 199. Just a quick explanation on how playoff points will work. Every game this week, all 6 of them will be worth 2 points. Next week in the divisional round, they will be worth 4 points. The championship games will be worth 6 points, and then the Super Bowl will be worth 8 points. So I do have a good opportunity to close the gap here, but definitely got some ground to make up, and the ground will be made up 2 points at a time. Starting with the first Saturday game of Wild Card Weekend, and the 5-seed Cleveland Browns heading to Houston to take on the 4-seed Texans. And we start by disagreeing. I have the Texans in this one, and Callan has the Browns.
Yeah, I like the Brownies here because, Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco has just been on the tear. He's really hit it off with Kevin Stefanski. For whatever reason, they just have really good chemistry and mold together. I don't know if it's Stefanski's coaching or...
I have no idea.
Stefanski came from Minnesota, so you guys kind of dropped the ball on that one.
We do that pretty often. It's not an uncommon thing.
Yeah, that's true. But, I like the Browns here. That defense for the Browns is one of the top units in the league this year. And I think that's going to be the key to shutting down C.J. Stroud and that high-powered Texans offense. And I think that with Myles Garrett, who do they have on the other end now? Za'Darius Smith?
Za'Darius Smith.
Yeah, Za'Darius Smith is always a good player. He just never seems to stick anywhere for long term. But great pass rushers, a very solid secondary. Like I said, one of the top units in the league this year. I think they're going to shut down the Texans, and I think that the Browns walk away with a pretty convincing win here, led by Joe Flacco, who probably throws another 300 yards and 3 touchdowns.
And 2 interceptions.
And 2 interceptions.
Because that's his favorite thing
to do.
That's
just commonplace now.
It really is. He plays out of his mind. Don't get me wrong at all, but he gets got to average like 2+ interceptions a game. It's crazy. But I have the Houston Texans in this one because I think that magic is going to rub off a little bit, or wear off a little bit rather. I think that it's just been way too hype of a run, way too much of a Cinderella story, because it's just, they shouldn't be here right now. Just like we touched on a second ago with the Vikings losing their starting quarterback. They lost Deshaun Watson too, and it looked very down for them when they announced Joe Flacco as their starter. But then Joe Flacco came out and averaged 3 touchdowns and 300 yards a game. So really, not even just kept their momentum going, but almost improved their season as it went on, because I don't think Watson was playing that well before Flacco came in. But it just, crazy things like that usually don't last all the way through the Super Bowl. You see these crazy runs, maybe even in the playoffs. But even those playoff runs, those Cinderella stories, usually don't go all the way to the Super Bowl. So I think it wears off here, and they have to go to Houston. Texans have the home field advantage. I see it being a very close game, but I do see a Houston win in this one.
It's funny, the Browns sold the farm for Deshaun Watson. All they needed to do was go get Joe Flacco off the couch mid-season. And hey, you got a comeback player of the year.
Quite literally off the couch. I don't know how anybody but him wins comeback player of the year, because it is just hilarious. So now next up, we have our second of 3 of the AFC games with the Saturday night game and the Miami Dolphins heading to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs, and we disagree again. I have the Dolphins in this one. Callan has the hometown Chiefs.
Yep, I like the Chiefs here because, well, again, the quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, is ultra talented and really seems to turn it on during the playoffs. But the key here is going to be the weather. It's supposed to be 0 degrees Saturday night in Kansas City, coming off the big snowstorm that hit the Midwest this week. So there's going to be snow in the area. It's going to be bitter cold, and it's going to be tough for that Miami Dolphins team to come up from Miami and play in that cold. Now, it's not impossible. Teams have come up from warm weather and won in the cold before, but that Dolphins defense is so beat up. They just had to sign Justin Houston and, gosh, who else did they sign? I can't remember. They signed 3 pass rushers today. But because they had injuries to Jerome Baker and Alex Van Ginkel, who were their outside linebackers, and Jalen Phillips also tore his Achilles earlier this season, and Bradley Chubb tore his ACL in the last game of the second to last game of the season. So they've really been running out of pass rushers, but they bring in the ancient Justin Houston to lead the team and lead the defense at least into the playoffs this year. So we'll see how that goes. But I think that cold is going to be too much for Tua, and I think it's going to be hard for him to really make those throws. It's going to be hard for Tyreek to get downfield because, well, he might be a little bit more used to playing in that cold. It'll be the Tyreek Hill revenge game coming back to Kansas City for the first time since the Kansas City Chiefs traded him to the Dolphins. But I still think that the Chiefs here, they just put enough together to win another close game here. I expect the Chiefs to win by a field goal here in a really exciting game, though.
Interesting. You touched on it right at the end there, but the main reason I have the Dolphins here is exactly that, the Tyreek Hill revenge game.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they are going to utilize him a lot less as a deep threat with that weather being climbed into it, but I think that they're going to use him a lot more in the screen game. I think they're just going to get the ball in his hands in any way they can, whether that's screen, slant, jet touch pass, a true end around, wide receiver run type thing. They're just going to feed Tyreek Hill in this one, and I don't think that Chiefs defense is going to be enough to keep up with it. And the speed in general, because, I mean, outside of Tyreek Hill, they have Jalen Waddle that they can do a similar thing with. They have Devon Achane in the backfield, who is one of the faster players on that team as well.
That's true. They do get back Waddle and Mostert.
Oh, and Mostert even.
So,
I thought he was still going to be out. But
no,
interesting.
I think they get both of them back this week. So the offense is recovering where the defense is kind of debilitating.
Yeah, so that's going to be a huge one. And the Chiefs have just looked a little sloppier than usual for a little longer than usual.
They have.
I talked about it earlier in the year that the Chiefs always go through a little span in the middle of the year where they just look really bad, and then they usually turn it around in December and really get it rolling in the playoffs. But they never really turned it around in December, in my opinion. I think that they won some games against some lesser teams that kept them in this position to stay in ahead of their division and get the 3 seed instead of the 4 seed. But I still don't think that they are the Chiefs that we know. I think that they have a few injuries and have lost a few big pieces. The cold is going to make it even harder to catch the ball, which is something that receiving corps has dealt with and had troubles with in the past already.
That is true.
So I agree that it's probably going to be about a 3-point game and a really exciting game. I have it falling in Miami's favor in this one. Next up, we move on to Sunday with the final AFC game. They have all the AFC games and then all the NFC games in a row, which I found interesting.
That too.
But for the Sunday noon game, we have the 7-seed Pittsburgh Steelers heading to Buffalo to take on the 2-seed Buffalo Bills. And we do agree on this one. We both have the Bills on this one. I think that this game could have been kind of exciting if the Steelers had TJ Watt, their main guy, but TJ Watt was already announced that he will not be playing in this game. And when I read that, I pretty much put down Bills by 1,000,000. I could see the Steelers by some like crazy game coming out and keeping this kind of close, maybe even a 1-possession game at 7 or 8 points. I by no means see this being a real shootout or thriller. I think the Bills very obviously win it. Even if they do start by playing sloppy, I just don't think that the Steelers have the manpower right now to keep up with the Bills.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I don't think the Steelers have that firepower to keep up with Buffalo. Buffalo has a lot of running ability with Josh Allen and James Cook, and a lot of deep field passing ability, deep downfield passing ability with Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, who I do believe is going to play. I know he got hurt in the last game, but as far as I know, he's all right and is going to play. So I think that offense is just going to be way too overwhelming for the Pittsburgh Steelers defense without TJ Watt, because TJ Watt was the heart and soul of that team, not just the defense, but the whole team.
Definitely. I completely agree. I could see that them playing Gabe Davis kind of on a snap count because they realize that never to overlook an opponent, especially in the playoffs. But I think they realize that this isn't their toughest battle and they'd rather have Davis later on down the line.
Yeah.
But I think we will see a little bit from him. Now, next up, we have the Sunday afternoon game with another 2 versus 7 seed, with the 7 seed Green Bay Packers heading down to Dallas to take on the 2 seed Cowboys. And we disagree on this one. I have the Cowboys. Callan has the Packers.
I like the Packers here because we know how to beat Mike McCarthy. We know all his tricks. We've learned everything that he knows, he learned in Green Bay. So, I mean, how did we not be able to beat him? I will be very surprised not very surprised, but a little surprised if this is a blowout victory for the Cowboys, because the only possibility there is if the defense plays the way it played those few weeks where they were one of the worst units in the league and allows the Dallas Cowboys to just score a ton of points. But I really don't think that's going to happen. They're becoming a turnover-based defense, and I know that Dak is prone to throwing interceptions. So we'll have to see if the Packers can get a few turnovers, and I think that'll be the big key, is winning the turnover battle for Green Bay. And another big thing is going to be how well Jordan Love plays, because now it's the real postseason. Now it's the real time to turn it on. This is where the big boys play. It's time to show that he belongs as not only the Packers franchise quarterback, but as one of the top quarterbacks in the league. And I expect him to go on a tear similar to Aaron Rodgers' playoff run in 2010.
Interesting. Yeah, the lights are on. Let's see if he can show up. I do agree that the Packers do have an overall advantage over Mike McCarthy, but I am a huge fan of history repeating itself and using past trends to try to predict the future. And if you look at the trend of the Cowboys this season, the one blaring thing is their performance at home and their performance away from home. So that was my huge factor right here. I think that this is going to be a closer game than a lot of people are giving it credit for. I do agree that that Jordan Love will play at least decent. I wouldn't say blow up by any means, but I think he'll at least hold his own. But nonetheless, the Cowboys at home just seem to be a different animal. I don't know what it is, but I want to say they average like almost 40 points a game at home.
They average 38 at home, which is funny because actually against Washington last week, they scored the most points that they have on a road game this year.
Oh, because it was in Washington.
It was in Washington. It'll be interesting to see if that flips now and the opposite trend hits them at home.
You better be really hoping that's the case.
That's kind of what I'm hoping for.
Because
not gonna lie,
I don't think that's gonna happen, and I don't think that Jordan Love or your offense in general has any chance of putting up over 40 on that Cowboys defense.
But if they score 40, it's over.
So I could maybe see it being close, but I'm on the just very slightly other end of the spectrum where I wouldn't be that surprised if it was a blowout win. So we'll see how it goes, but I got the Cowboys in this one. Now moving on to the Sunday night game with the 6 seed Los Angeles Rams heading to Detroit to take on the 3 seed Lions. And we agree again on this one. We both have Matthew Stafford and the Rams picking up an upset win in Detroit. This is what he has been waiting for. All those years in Detroit, all those years of not making the playoffs, not winning his division. And this is his chance to not necessarily even get revenge, but just make up for everything. Because I really do think Stafford did kind of enjoy his time in Detroit. They were very nice to him. The fans all loved him.
Mm-hmm.
Though they didn't see the most winning, he saw a lot of success and a lot of good players such as Calvin Johnson come through Detroit with him. But now he's won his Super Bowl. He's moved on since his years in Detroit, and he's going to be going back there. Lights are going to be on him. It's going to be a lot of emotion for him, but I think that he's one of those players who turns that emotion into skill. I think he's going to use that to play even better than he has been, and we see a Detroit first-round exit after winning the NFC North for the first time ever.
Which will be funny because the last time the Lions won a division in 1993, they were beaten in the first round also by the Wildcard. So it'll be interesting if the wild card beats them again.
History repeating
itself. There we go. But I do like the Rams and Matthew Stafford here because of, like you just said, I think that Stafford is going to go in there and show them that he is still the dominant quarterback that he was in Detroit. And I mean not dominant with wins, but definitely successfully dominant in statistics. He put up numerous Detroit Lions quarterback records, and I think still holds most of them. So it'll be interesting to see how he feels about Detroit finally getting in the playoffs now that he's out of Detroit. So not to say it was his fault, but I just wonder if there's a bitter taste in his mouth that now they're being successful without him, even though he did have his own success. But, it's hard to leave your original team and see them do well. And the other key thing here is that the Lions are going to be without star rookie Sam Laporta, who injured his knee in the last game of the year against the Vikings last week. So it'll be really tough to replace that production. He had 10 receiving touchdowns, which I believe was a tight end
rookie record.
Yeah. So it'll be tough to replace that production for the Lions, and I think because of that, the Rams sneak away with a victory here.
Yeah, I think with a guy as competitive as Stafford, that definitely has to leave a bad taste in his mouth seeing success. And we can sit here and talk about Stafford and his connection to the Lions all day, but something that I've kind of overlooked is Jared Goff and his connection to the Rams, because he's going to be the real X factor here.
Everybody kind of forgets about that.
He was a first-round pick by the Rams in 2016 and went to a Super Bowl with the Rams and ended up losing it. But he's kind of got his own little revenge game going on, and I think that he's going to be the real X factor in this one, because Stafford is pretty consistent. He always plays well, but it seems like Goff either turns the ball over a lot and plays really bad, or plays safe and plays really well. So we'll have to see which Jared Goff shows up as well. Now jumping from Sunday night to the final game of Wildcard Weekend on Monday night with our final NFC matchup, of course, and the 5-seed Philadelphia Eagles heading to Tampa Bay to take on the 4-seed Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we end this episode off by agreeing again. We both have the Buccaneers in this one. Just kind of like we had with the Chiefs a little bit ago, just like I was saying with them. They always play a little sloppy, but then they're able to turn it around. But the Eagles, just as the Chiefs, have been playing just a little too sloppy for a little too long. And, they didn't lose the big-name players like Tyreek Hill like the Chiefs did. And they didn't really have huge scheme changes like the Chiefs did on the defense and offense or offensive side of the ball. So I don't know where their kind of all of a sudden drop came from. I don't know if it's just players not playing up to it, players not feeling it because it's not these playoffs. It's really hard to explain. I don't know where it came from, but it has definitely been happening. You've just seen a decline in the Philadelphia Eagles, and you really saw it last week when they were playing for the 2 seed in the division in the NFC, and they got absolutely stomped by Tyrod Taylor and the New York Giants. I mean, they were playing their starters. They were playing to win because they wanted that 2 seed and to win the division. And they got beat by this total bottom half team of the New York Giants. So there's just something up there. There's a disconnect. And I think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have enough talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball, to take advantage of that disconnect. If the Eagles don't show up and the Bucs win this one, I don't think that the Bucs even come close to winning next week, because I don't think that they should really be in the playoffs, or not should be, but I don't think they're going to be successful in the playoffs rather. But I think they are good enough to take advantage of a slumping team, and that's just what the Eagles are right now.
Yeah, the Eagles are definitely slumping. That Super Bowl hangover that everyone talks about really hit them kind of late, hit them mid-season. I don't know if they just started to wear out from playing so much last year and then playing into this year. I don't know. That's kind of what I feel like the Super Bowl hangover is that guys just get worn out playing so long into the postseason and then having to just come back into the regular season and do it again. But I like the Buccaneers here because of Baker Mayfield, who has been on a tear ever since that game in Lambeau, and he has really led the way there in Tampa Bay all season. And I'm really excited for him to clinch that NFC South after he was kind of casted off by the Browns and the Panthers. He did have a little bit of success with the Rams last season.
One game of success.
That one game of success, but it was sure was interesting.
It was a fun game.
But I think that he's really put it together this season. He is a little bit banged up, but sometimes I think that's when he plays his best, is when he's hurt and downtrodden.
It really is.
It is.
It's a crazy point.
Favre was kind of like that.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Baker's first taste of the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think he ever made it with the Browns. He had a pretty decent 2018 season, but I don't think they ever actually went to the playoffs.
No, I don't think they did.
So man, that is just
first playoff
that is
game.
just even more motivation, even more fire under his ass. And Baker Mayfield can be a dangerous man with some fire under his ass.
I've seen it firsthand.
Yep. So that was our wild card weekend predictions for this first round of the NFL playoffs. Thank you all so much for watching, and make sure to stay tuned until next week when we won't have a prediction episode just as we did this week. We will just kind of talk about the previous games as we go through our divisional rounds prediction, which will be the only episode next week. But until then, don't forget
to eat the W.